Today on Rates and Barrels, it's Fantasy Friday. We get ready for a busy weekend of waiver wire pickups, and we have our first taste of the majors hot dog reviews of the season with senior hot dog correspondent Niv Shah. Let's go. Welcome to Rates and Barrels. It's Friday, April 10th. Derek Van Riper here with Eno Saris. Fantasy Friday here on the show. Eno, how's it going for you as your spring break winds down?
I made it to Fantasy Friday. The saying is that beer hit my hand like Mjolnir, and I think I'm going to go to Bach again tonight. The best beer bar in San Diego. After I work some of the Padres game, but it was a grind. It's not easy to work when your kids are on vacation. We went to Dave and Buster's yesterday.
Oh, they went without you?
No, I had to take them.
Yeah. So you had a busy day, doubled up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a well-deserved trip to Bach. So yeah, I hope you get back there on Friday night once you get everything all wrapped up. Little baseball news you should know as we get started. We did see Corbin Carroll sit out Thursday's game with a hip injury that was suffered while legging out a triple earlier in the week. I think the more important thing here, by all accounts, this is a relatively minor issue as of Friday morning. He's really showing no ill effects from the hamate surgery that he had in February, right? The barrel and hard hit rates are right in line with 2025. So I think the start of the season overall has gone about as well as we could have hoped for Corbin Carroll based on how news broke about that hamate soon after spring training got underway.
Yeah, I love the way that he is pairing that plus strikeout rate with the plus hard hit and barrel and bat speeds. So he was even up in bat speed over last year. So, great job doing that, despite probably there still being a little bit of pain. That's what people report, is that this is a pain tolerance issue, and that, he's got some pain in that hand, but he's ignoring it.
We'll see if we get something similar from Francisco Lindor in the coming weeks. His hard hit rate is down slightly so far, but it's so early. It's not necessarily something I'm worried about. It's more of a check your priors with how were things before this and what do they look like now? Down slightly, not that much of a concern yet. Andrew Vaughn working his way back from the same injury. Jackson Holliday eventually coming off the hamate as well. So plenty of players to track with that particular ailment. We did see Brent Rooker leave a game on Thursday, mid at bat after a swing. He's going to have some imaging on Friday. They're calling it right flank discomfort. That was the initial report. People thought that was like a tasty way to describe an injury. I saw the highlight. It looked like it hurt. He looked like he was very uncomfortable, so I'd be pretty surprised if it doesn't lead to some sort of IL stint, even if it were the minimum. Yeah, some missed time seems likely. The way the A's are likely to cover any sort of Rooker absence is probably a platoon, mixing and matching some kind of combination of Carlos Cortez and Andy Ibanez, which doesn't really give us a lot to get excited about on the fantasy side besides like mono leagues. But the absence of Rooker would be tough to replace because they don't have a clear and obvious one guy that steps up and gets all that playing time.
Yeah, I think, otherwise the interesting thing about Brent Rooker this early season is that the strikeout rate has popped, and, that's in tandem with, swinging a little bit less, in the early season. So I'm not worried about him striking out at a 35% rate. I don't think he's going to do that. But I also wonder if the projections that are, giving him about a 25% rate are off, because last year when Brent Rooker struck out 22% of the time, and that affects all his projections with an outsized rate, because that was 700 plate appearances with a 22% strikeout rate, he still had a 14% swinging strike rate. And that's still a pretty large, that's one of the larger swinging strike rates for anybody that has below, like a better than average strikeout rate. So I think that he's headed towards the season where he's going to strike out more, 26, 27, 28% of the time, like he did in 2024. If you give him league average luck on balls in play and a 28% strikeout rate, you're likely to get maybe a 240 average out of him, 250. So I'm thinking the under on rest of season projected average, the over on rest of season projected strikeout rates. And I don't think it'll be Rooker's best season. I mean, he's going to be hurt a little bit and he's going to have to come back from that. But he's still going to, I think, get close to 30 homers and, still hit 240 of 30 homers and a handful of stolen bases and be a strong power outfielder. So I'm not dropping him in any leagues.
2 for 2 on the base pass so far. If he were to find 15 or 20 bags to offset that lost batting average, potentially, that could be a huge adjustment. You'll gladly give up those points in average if it comes with more speed, but much too early to tell if the stolen base approach from the first 12 games is actually going to carry over. I think you're right to lower those expectations accordingly. We'll get some more details on that probably sometime after this episode ends. We saw a scary collision in the outfield for the Tigers. Riley Green and Parker Meadows collided. Meadows was carted off the field, diagnosed with a concussion, kept in the hospital overnight for observation. So he's going to miss time. How much time, that remains to be seen. I imagine we'll see some Matt Vierling in center field. They already have recalled Wenceel Perez from Toledo, so there's your who actually nets out and wins some playing time. I think this really just creates more of a defensive problem for the Tigers, though, because the best thing Parker Meadows brings to the table consistently is quality defense in center field. And I feel like the way that team is built, unless they're going to play Javier Baez out there again on occasion, they just don't really have that depth piece covered particularly well right now.
Yeah, I'm becoming increasingly pessimistic about Meadows' bat with every plate appearance in the big leagues, though. I'm not sure he's going to be a league average bat. I had some hope because at times he flashes good plate discipline, contact rate, like some nascent, he had a 9% barrel rate in a small sample in 2023. And you're like, and he has like a round league average bat speed. So you're like, this guy, if he had league average power, he has some speed. And this could be a kind of like a 260, 15 plus defense outfielder. I don't know. I'm getting pessimistic about it. Maybe it's too early, but it's 4 seasons now where he hasn't really managed to stay healthy or show that power component consistently.
Yeah, I think if we start to change our expectations for Parker Meadows to just be that of a quality, real life bench outfielder, then we'll just be less likely to roster him and force him into our lineups from a fantasy perspective. And that's okay, right? He could be a big leaguer for a long time that way. From a contextual perspective, just looking at his overall body of work over the last 4 years, I thought, okay, how does he stack up to Blake Perkins, like a true backup that the Brewers have had out there, a good defensive center fielder? He does hit better than Perkins. Over the last 4 seasons combined, Parker Meadows 95 WRC plus, Perkins an 84. So just in terms of is he a big leaguer? What can he do? I think that's kind of a floor sort of comp. The worst case scenario is that he's a Blake Perkins type player. The best case scenario is that he hits a little bit more than that, which is still useful to a lot of teams. It's just not the 20 homer, 20 steal guy that we thought we could be getting a few years back. Some more injuries. Hunter Goodman left after a hit by pitch on Thursday.
I saw that one.
Yeah, 34.6% K rate through 13 games, barrel rate down to 3.6%. And I think the most challenging thing about talking about fantasy baseball in the early weeks of April is that nothing means much yet. We see early trends. We want to react to them. We want to be mindful of them. I'm not panicking about the K rate being up for Hunter Goodman. I'm short term just more worried about the injury and how much time it might cost them if this ends up leading into the IL. Catcher is a little bit of a wasteland on the wire in 2 catcher leagues. It's certainly not bad in 1 catcher leagues right now. So I think the type of league you play in also dictates just how difficult it's going to be to replace him for any sort of absence.
Yeah, I think there was some blood. It was a laceration, which I think it's actually one of the better outcomes. It makes it maybe less likely that there was a broken bone or something that'll take him out for a long time. So I think he'll sit for a few days until he feels better gripping the bat and gripping the glove. He did stay in the game, and then I think it had something to do with how it felt in the glove. After he was running the bases, that he got replaced then. Any case, one thing that you want from Hunter Goodman are those June and July months in Coors, and he just hasn't gotten those yet. And that's going to help his strikeout rate, stay closer to 30%. That's going to help him, turn more doubles into homers and things like that. So I don't really see anything that's too worrisome. I mean, an 18% swing strike rate is worrisome, but you always knew that strikeouts were part of the package there.
Yeah, a lower average was expected all along. Some swing and miss being in the profile has always been part of the issue with Goodman. I think the keys overall to his success are that he's improved his defense enough to be their primary catcher and play a ton. And as you said, the weather's going to get warmer. The ball is going to start flying in Colorado. Better days are likely ahead for Hunter Goodman. I did see Jorge Polanco has been slowed by Achilles soreness. It's the second time this year this has already popped up. So in the event that this turns into an IL stint, the things that I was thinking about from a playing time perspective is that, Mark Vientos has already started 9 games in a row entering Friday. And Brett Beatty has started 5 of the last 6. So they're already playing a lot. And those were 2 guys that we looked at all winter long and thought maybe there's extra pressure on their playing time because of Polanco. I think all of this issue that Polanco's dealing with, all it would really do on the bottom of the roster is maybe nudge Ronnie Mauricio into occasional starts. I think they've sort of shown us around Polanco being a little banged up already how they would make the bigger adjustment.
There's a little bit of a larger concern around the Mets with, the fact that Marcus Semien has started slowly. Soto's on the IL. Just when you pair the slow starts of somebody like Semien with the age at 35, and then you have Carson Bench. I think he's holding his head above water and doing okay. He has a homer and a steal, and he's done some things in the major leagues, but it's also certainly possible that he may not be fully ready. You start to get a little bit concerned about the Mets with these different pieces the way they are, but the overall being 7-6 despite kind of fighting through some issues. I think this will be a team that'll be at least in the wild card race at the end of the season. I think it'll be fine. I have 0 shares of Jorge Polanco. I just saw that injury history and was worried that that something would crop up this year. And so I don't have too much exposure there. I do have some Mark Vientos shares, and one thing I'm really happy about, and this is something that I think is instructive in the future, is kind of like big drops in bat speed in young players. Maybe you have to think about the fact that they could be injured or, doing a different strategy or something where they can get it back. I mean, we don't have that many years of this data. We know that bat speed tells you as much about rest of season balls in play production as barrel rate, which is extremely powerful. So it is an important tool to use. But at the same time, Vientos had a 73.7 in 2023, and then it dropped to the 71s for the next 2 years, and now he's back at 73. So you have to give some grace to the players. Maybe, in the smallest of samples, they could be facing pitchers that are pitching them in certain ways that keep their bat speed down. They could have a minor injury that they're not reporting. And for younger players, there's still the physical ability to get it back. So I like this version of Mark Vientos a lot. And this is why I didn't want the Mets to trade Vientos for Robert Jr. last year. And I thought this was still in him. Yeah, of course, he's still not he's still a bit of a defensive liability, but now they're playing him at first and DH. And I absolutely think he can continue to strike out better than league average. Because he's a really aggressive guy. So, with Rooker, I just said like 14, 16, percent swing strike rate is a big deal. And, Vientos has the same, but Rooker is more passive. So that's going to turn into more strikeouts. You definitely see people with 14, 15% swing strike rates like Vientos has that are as aggressive as he is that keep the strikeout rate down. So I think he'll have around a league average strikeout rate, a better than league average batting average. So like a 260 or even I would give him. And I think he'll hit 20, 25 homers this year.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's still plenty going right for the Mets too. I mean, Vientos bouncing back early. That's a great sign. Luis Robert looks like the good version of Luis Robert in the early days. We wondered how much just being in a completely new situation where he's not asked to be a superstar, where he's got a great cast around him, how much that would maybe rejuvenate him. Looks like that's happening so far. Francisco Alvarez is healthy and hitting to begin the season. I think we saw some flashes of that around a bunch of injuries these last 2 seasons. And then, Brett Beatty, who showed a lot more versatility than expected last year, he's been off to a slow start, along with Polanco and Lindor coming off the hamate, Semien, who you mentioned, and Bo Bichette, who they brought in a free agent deal. A combination of those guys will be fine. There's just not... you could tell me that Marcus Semien's a below-average bat now, and I'm not going to fight you on that. He's also probably not a 77 WRC plus over a full season either, so he'll likely be a little bit better than he's been so far.
I do have a question for you. I mean, he hasn't attempted a stolen base. Is that correct? He hasn't even attempted one?
He has not converted one, for sure.
No, he has not attempted one either. Not attempted a stolen base. And stolen base attempts are something that there's some signal this early because it's an intent thing. If he was going to steal 20 bags, he would have tried to steal one by now. So I'm not even sure he's going to steal 10 bags this year. What I've noticed with the Razzball tools is that somebody like Cole Young has moved ahead of him in small samples. Like I think this weekend I'm playing Cole Young over Marcus Semien in some places because the Razzball tools said that was a good idea. And I'm like, I'm not even sure what Semien's going to be this year. We know that projections for 35-year-olds are less reliable. What leagues are you dropping Marcus Semien in? And in the leagues where you're not dropping him, are you trying to find someone to start over him yet?
Yeah, 8 and 10 team mixed leagues. I think you're probably looking, maybe you already were looking as soon as you drafted him because he was one of your last guys on the roster. I think in a 12-teamer, if we're talking about like the RotoWire Online Championship, highly competitive, 30-player roster situation, maybe you bench him. I think it's interesting that the projections turned out that way because just eyeballing it back of the napkin, the series this weekend is against the A's. It's at home in Flushing. It's JT Ginn, Jacob Lopez, Aaron Savale. So you get a lefty.
That's what I'm saying. Like
2 righties you don't fear. Like I think my brain works in a way where if I was willing to roster and play someone 3 weeks ago, I'm probably thinking more about what you're doing, the bench option in a 12-team league or anything deeper. And then a week or 2 from now, if what we see is still really ugly, then I'm going down the road of making a cut. Because I don't know. I mean, Cole Young might be out there in some of those shallow leagues. Angel Martinez is playing a lot for Cleveland right now. Like you can like find guys. So like I'm not panicking, but I'm not in love with the start of the season for Marcus Semien. I understand where your concern comes from.
Time is undefeated. He's been one of my favorite players to cover, talk to, and watch. Honestly, and I don't want to sound like it's totally over, but maybe there's something to this. Like he was one of these guys that got the most out of his balls in play. If you look at his barrel rates, they've never been good. His bat speed's never been a plus. And even when he was hitting, 25, 30 homers a year, he's always been a guy who just pulls it a ton in the air. I just wonder if there's maybe an expiry date on that sort of approach. What that means for what Bregman's going to do going forward, what that means for Paredes, what it means for other guys that have made a lot out of the pull air approach. Maybe there's just some point where those just become warning track fly balls.
Maybe. I'm going to keep a close eye on it. Want to see if we can get a little bit of a bounce back from a favorable spot. I mean, between those A's starters and that A's bullpen, this will be a nice little 3-game set for him to maybe get right, along with a few of those other bats that we talked about.
One last thing about him, though, is that our traditional tools that we use in the early samples aren't not going to be very helpful with him. We're not going to be able to say, look at his barrel rate and say, oh, something's wrong or something's fine. You know what I mean? It's a bit of a feeling out process with him. I guess what I want to see is, a pulled homer and a stolen base attempt. That's what I want to see. Maybe a little more contact.
Well, I think this is where rest of season projections give you that good macro snapshot. You're still looking at 15 to 20 homers, depending on which set you're looking at. Zips being the pessimist, the Bat X surprisingly being the optimist. all kind of in the 230, low 240s range for average. You knew that going in. Between 7 and 12 steals, depending on the system you're looking at, too. So I think if you still see him as someone the Mets will play every single day, then he eventually gets you where you want to go. But got to remember, too, he did end last season hurt. So maybe physically something is still a little bit off for Marcus Semien. We are going to hit a quick break. When we come back, we'll dig into some of the players we are picking up this weekend with our waiver wire preview. Welcome back to Rates and Barrels. We're digging into our weekend waiver wire preview. And this week, we'll start on the pitching side. You're probably looking for replacements if you lost Cade Horton, Christian Javier. Shane Smith got demoted to AAA, which was a pretty quick hook. Eno, I think, regrets being bullied by me and commenters to move Shane Smith up in his initial ranks because you had that one right, man. You just did. We all owe you an apology.
Whatever. I moved him up to 135, so nobody drafted him off of my rankings. I'm clean on this one.
Yeah, it was all because of projections, other people's rankings, ADP, other factors, right? So it wasn't Eno's fault if you ended up with Shane Smith. He did his part. We've been grouping players based on their roster rates on CBS. Why CBS? Because it's publicly available roster rates. Good to give you a sense of who the broader public might be thinking about in similar ways. We also look at the roster trends, who's being added, who's being dropped, because that also gives us a sense of who people are actually thinking about as they make decisions. So I want to start in the above 60% range. Bryce Elder, the believers are showing up. He's now 65% rostered, one of the absolute biggest risers across all positions over the past week. And I'm going to put him in the form of a Royal Rumble would you rather. So this is a choose your own adventure. If you're looking to replace someone like Horton and a combination of these guys is available, I just want to know what direction you'd be most likely to go. You've got Elder, Ryan Nelson, Ronaldo Lopez, Clay Holmes, Mitch Keller, Kyle Harrison, Michael Burrows, another Brave and Grant Holmes, and Joey Cantillo. So a mix of guys that we have talked about over the course of the last couple of weeks, a few that have sort of slipped through the cracks, one that was the most discussed pitcher in the history of Rates and Barrels through the first 4 years of the show and has finally shrunk down to the point where I don't think he holds that honor anymore. At least he doesn't have it for the last 4 years. That, of course, being Mitch Keller. So out of that big cluster, these guys are all right around 60 to 70% rosters. So they're not available everywhere. Who do you actually like as maybe the best option to go out and replace a Cade Horton or someone that you've lost from your pitching staff?
I'm going to start with the negative.
Good.
I'm just feeling negative this morning. I blamed the beers last night. I'm going to say anybody but Bryce Elder.
Anybody but Bryce Elder. Okay, so make the anti-Bryce Elder case. Why is everyone wrong for rushing to the wire to add onto their rosters?
I know he's made some changes. He has a new cutter, but he has a sub 90 stuff plus. I'm going to list to you last year. Even I've sorted by location plus, so I'm giving you that he has great command, which is probably true. But among the league leaders in location plus, here are the guys with a sub 90 stuff plus last year who threw 100 innings: Miles Michaelis, Tomoyuki Sagano, Antonio Senzatella. End of list. Even if I go into the low 90s, Chris Paddock, Zach Gallen, Adrian Hauser.
Named one good pitcher.
Yeah, but he didn't have a good year.
I know there's variance. Took him some time to make some adjustments.
I mean, could he? But there's still a distance between Bryce Elder and Zach Gallen. And then the last thing I just want to show is like sort of theoretically why it's not great stuff. And so I went and found similar arm angles to Bryce Elder with Jansen Junk and Woods Richardson. And I just put up there as pitch movement plots because I want to help people sort of, see what I see when I look at these pitch movement plots. And when I look at Elders, I see everything is along his arm angle, right? Like if you look at that arm angle at 49 degrees, everything's along the arm angle and the pitches are grouped tightly together. So there's not that much difference between them. What we know from research is the further distance creates some opportunities where batters don't swing. So you can get called strikes. So what he's got right now, he would have to get swinging strikes. This is not a good arsenal for called strikes. Look at Jansen Junk. Look at the separation between his four seam and his curveball, the sweeper and the change, how far apart all these pitches are. Now you can see how like Junk is able to get called strikes when he can't get swinging strikes. He can get freeze takes. He can, and you can also see that, his pitches, the sweeper and the change, and those things are on a different plane than his arm angle, right? You can just see that. And then Woods Richardson is is probably one of the better comps to Elder in terms of similar arm angle. Everything's along his arm angle, and they both have 92 mile-an-hour velo when 95 is the average. But even Woods Richardson has that curveball he can use that separates things a little bit more. So I just see this as putting a ton of pressure on Elder's command to succeed, and this is it's 3 ticks below average on velo. This is why I don't like Elder. So that's too much negativity. I'm going to go into the positive space now, and I'm going to say of the group that you mentioned, I think Kyle Harrison and Joey Cantillo are my favorites. Sure. Kyle Harrison, we all talked about the kick change. It's being hit pretty hard by hitters. I think he's struggling to sort of work it into his arsenal, which is a funny thing about new pitches that we only look at the good side. We're like, oh, new pitch, he's got a new pitch. But Kyle Harrison's pitch is theoretically good, the kick change, but it is being hit really hard right now. So I think he's struggling to figure out. The good news is the four seam's a little better, the slurve's a little better, everything's just a little bit better, and he's more of a 3-pitch pitcher. Joey Cantillo now he has 2 pairings. He has this four seam straight change, and he has the slider and curve, which look exactly the same in terms of spin. And so he can tunnel these things off of each other. He can tunnel the slider and curve. He throws a lot of high sliders and the curves off of them. And he can command the slider better than any other pitch. So if I had to pick one pitcher off this list, it would be Joey Cantillo. Among the veterans, I like Reynaldo Lopez and Clay Holmes and Mitch Keller. Maybe sort of in that order. I don't hate the veterans, but I'm chasing upside maybe a little bit here and going for Joey Cantillo.
I was trying to come back to someone whose arsenal almost across the board is below average stuff from the last 2 seasons. Command is good and results were good. And yet another Brewer popped into my mind. I'm thinking of 2024 Tobias Myers. So something about being able to make it work with a lot of command and a lot of pitches leaves my mind more open on Elder than it would have been in the past. I do think team context is really important, though, as you're kind of breaking ties with these guys that are below average stuff, good or above average command guys, because they're dependent upon the quality of the defense behind them. They're dependent upon their team not leaving them out there 3rd time through the order when they shouldn't and doing things like that. And I think Atlanta's right on that threshold where I trust them just enough to use Elder correctly. But the crazy thing, look at the last 2 seasons. The ERA has been over 5 since the start of 2024. The whip's been bad. He hasn't missed bats like this before. And even if you're looking at the swinging strike rate alongside the K rate, an 11% swinging strike rate doesn't point to a 27.7% K rate, right? You're probably talking about 21, 22%, which is still better than past years. If he maintains very good command, 5-6% walk rate, that's still usable, but that's not someone you're excited about in a 10-team league, given all those factors. So I do think you got to be a little bit careful with Elder, depending on the type of league that you're in. Ryan Nelson, just mystery wrapped in a riddle. I'm not surprised that you sidestepped him, but I am surprised that 3 Atlanta starters that we had questions about are all pitching well right now, because that's keeping J.R. Ritchie and Didier Fuentes at bay. And I think wrapped up in the waiver conversation every single week is kind of well, who are you dropping? Like who's going? If you don't have the obvious drop from a multi-week injury or a season-ending injury, are you still holding the young starters in Atlanta or Robbie Snelling or guys that we hope are going to get early season call-ups, but we just don't know.
No,
and I
don't
say
think
that with the Atlanta situation being weird because Reynaldo Lopez is going to serve some games of that suspension, maybe all of the games that he was given in the near future. So there could at least be a spot start opportunity for one of those prospects you've been holding. It's a weird time to be looking at those two guys, Richie and Didier Fuentes, knowing they're pitching well at AAA and that we don't have a high level of confidence in the stuff of the back end starters, including Martin Perez, and the health of a lot of guys in that group, right? I mean, as good as Lopez and Holmes have been, we know like the injury histories there are pretty extensive.
With Martin Perez, I forgot that he's in the rotation right now. So I guess that means that, he could struggle enough. The problem with Bryce Elder also is that he has no options left. So, even if you bring somebody up for a spot start for Reynaldo Lopez for that one he misses, I think they go back down right away. Unless they pitch so well that they decide to move on from Martin Perez. So like it's, I guess there's an opportunity there, but I wouldn't be chasing the theoretical when we have pop-up guys, like if you were like, how much better do you think Didier Fuentes could be than Joey Cantillo? And how much are you willing to wait around for that? Right. I think that, especially early season, you gotta jump on some of these guys that are popping, and trust them and trust your gut or trust what trust the bird in the hand a little bit, because if you're chasing the two in the bush over and over again, you're gonna miss out on these pop-up starters that give you 150 innings because you really wanted those 65 innings from Didier Fuentes, So I think it's better to choose off the list here of pitchers that are pitching right now. I do want to throw, Reynaldo Lopez. It is really interesting that, the spread on his velos has always been really large. And the fact that his max velo is in line with past years, despite the sitting velo being down a little bit, is interesting to me. A 21% actual strikeout rate with a 10.5% swing strike rate, 89 stuff plus, and a projected 23% strikeout rate. It just means to me that I'd be careful with him with matchups. I don't think he's going to be, much better than his career ERA, which of course includes relief and all sorts of ups and downs, but like a 3.89 ERA for his career, that's, I think, about right for him in terms of what I think Reynaldo Lopez can do going forward. And I think some of these other guys could beat him still.
All right, we're going to try to move a little faster through some other names to get some reads here. Luis Gil's back in the Yankees rotation on Friday night against the Rays. How long does he stick? What's the interest level in picking him up? He's in the 40 to 60% range, so a little less roster than that big cluster we talked about.
Yeah, I mean, you've got, at Tampa on Friday, and then theoretically at least, the Angels next week. I like those two starts. I like his stuff. His command can be his undoing, and I think that if he doesn't do well in those two starts against those two opponents and racks up the walks, then I think he's an easy drop. But he's in that place where, you're sorting through guys. And I think the upside is enough that I'll take him because, Rodon's throwing now and Cole's been throwing and, there's always going to be a crunch at some point. But the short-term landing pad for Luis Gil looks pretty good for me.
How about Jeffrey Springs, who just put up an improbable 7 shutout innings of a 1-hit ball at Yankee Stadium on Thursday? He's got a 2-step in weekly league, so those next 2 turns are home against the Rangers and home against the White Sox at Sutter Health Park in Sacramento.
I like him a lot, actually. This is the type of high command, lower stuff guy that I can handle. I just want my high location, like high command guy to have, at least high 90s, mid 90s stuff. And that's where we find him right now. The problem is I might still take Gil over him because of that home away split. Jeffrey Springs last year had a 4.81 at home. And when you look at overall, you say, oh, that's a decent usable pitcher, 3.45 away, but it's just harder to keep a guy in your roster that you almost never want to start at home. And so Luis Gil has a little bit more chance of being an everyday starter.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at it. Like the ceiling's a little higher. I do think Springs is the kind of guy that could be acquired by a contender, though. You know, if you're looking for pitching, talked about the Cade Horton injury from a real life perspective. Springs just seems like he's the type of pitcher the Cubs like. The good news here, though, is Matthew Boyd's already approaching a rehab outing, so I think that's a relatively minor issue. So
trades
anyway,
are
it's
rare
name to
at
file
this
away
point
for
of the
later.
season too. Trades are rare at this point of the season.
I think we're just going to hear so much about Sandy Alcantara. I want to start adding other names to the who could the team trade for list. I think Springs would actually be on a list like that. Next cluster down in that 20 to 40% range. A couple names that stood out to me. Mick Abel, because it's been the Mick Abel roller coaster so far. He actually fell in roster rate from 52 to 38% on CBS, but just turned in a nice outing this week. His next two starts come home Tuesday against Boston, and then on the road the following Tuesday, April 21st, against the Mets, if the current schedule holds. So I'm just curious, is he actually someone you're hanging on to in 12-team leagues right now, or is he a little more matchup dependent, where you're thinking about a pitch and ditch situation and maybe even cutting him this weekend?
The 40/45 future command grades from Fangraphs on Mick Abel seem to be more prescient than his small sample location numbers so far. That's the negative. The positive is that he has a wide arsenal of really good pitches that he really showcased in his last start. I still think he's the upside to be a top 50 pitcher this year. And so I'm going to buy. I don't like that Boston start, though. I don't know. Are you starting him at home against Boston?
It's going to start warming up in this region. I saw a couple 70s for the highs coming up early in the week. So if it's 70-ish in Madison, it's probably 70-ish up in the Twin Cities. That's very borderline. That's like last guy in my lineup material. I would try to make a plan to not have to start Abel there. I feel better about starting him on the road against the Mets the following Tuesday if he's on my roster in those situations.
If we're in the under 20% range, I like Eduardo Rodriguez. That's why I wanted to bring him up, because we're about to jump into a group that I don't really like that much, and I like Eduardo Rodriguez better. So I just wanted to say, if it's Eduardo Rodriguez versus Davis Martin, I'm taking Eduardo Rodriguez.
All right, good. Because the under 20% group, widely available guys that, sickos are thinking about in their various leagues. Now, we love you. If you play in deep leagues, you're just like us. Davis Martin is sitting out here with a 27% K rate early on. He's got a 6.8% swinging strike rate. It's even lower than last year. I'm going to say there's nothing to see here. Are you seeing something that I am not seeing as it pertains to the first few starts from Davis Martin?
No, I don't buy that swinging strike. I don't buy that strikeout rate at all. And in fact, I think it's in making a Sierra and other ERA estimators look better than it should. So I'm not buying on him. In fact, this whole group leaves me cold, except for one name. I like Javier Assad. I think he's a pickup right now. And I know it's a pretty small sample, but I just wanted to point out that he's tweaked his arsenal. He's made a lot of changes. And if you now look, and I'm throwing this up right now, if you look at his arsenal in terms of what he can do against lefties, he actually has 3 or 4 pitches now that he can use against lefties in the change 4-seam. Even the cutter at 94 stuff plus against lefties, not bad. So he's a 5-pitch pitcher against lefties. He's a little bit more of a sinker sweeper guy against righties, but that's okay too. Like, that's a strong approach against righties that maybe leads to some issues third time through the order, because it's a 2-pitch mix against righties to the most part. But wide mix of pitches he's commanding well that are all a little bit better this year than they were in the past, with small tweaks to the movement profiles and then a jump in velo up to 93.7. So I'm buying Javier Assad in this group. That's my favorite pitcher in the really small ownership group.
What's interesting, too, is that you have to make a difficult lineup choice with him. He's at Philly on Monday, so not exactly the spot where you love to throw guys. It's
But a
even if
two-start
you
week in weekly leagues, very interesting.
right, the second one would be home against the Mets unless Boyd is quick to return from the IL, or they can let him have another crack at the Phillies the following Monday if they choose to keep him in the rotation over Colin Ray, which I tend to think you believe if you are flagging him as someone in this low-owned group that you actually want to have. I thought you were going to say George Clausen, the prospect in the Angels system that got up. I mean, there's a chance he sticks around beyond the weekend, right? He's only 6% rostered right now.
Yeah, we just have the issue is again 35 present, 40 future command grade on George Clausen, backed up by 74 location plus and a 31% walk rate in his debut, and minor league walk rates in the double digits for George Clausen. So I just don't think it'll be an easy transition for him into the big leagues. I think it'll take him some time. I'm not saying that in dynasty leagues, I still care about him. He's a guy that I would acquire. I'm a stuffist. I mean, this is a guy who has, top end stuff, if he gets it all together, 97 mile an hour fastball. But, I don't think that it's going to be an easy transition for him. I'd love to see JT again. I think that we'll get to know some more about what his arsenal looks like as a starter. He's got a really good sinker, Ginn does. And so there's at least a floor for Ginn that's not there for Clausen. So, if you're talking about, an AL only league, I'd much rather, I think, Ginn. Now, if we're talking about a dynasty league or shallower leagues, putting Clausen on my bench would be a consideration.
Yeah, I do think with Ginn, he's going to have to stretch out a little bit in the role of the highest pitch count of the season, 45. That was his first appearance of the year back on March 29th. Most recently, April 5th, he threw 27. So can't imagine much more than 45 or 50, and his first turn back could be a little frustrating if you're trying to squeeze a win out of someone in a deep league, but he's 1% rostered, gives you an idea where the interest is, and next couple starts, not bad. Home against Texas, road against the Mariners. The under 20% guy that I like is actually Sean Burke. I think I was a year too early on him. He's got a good four-seamer. He's got above average command of 4 of his 5 pitches. I think we're seeing that in the early season walk rate. I think he's very schedule dependent, but he's at least to me, he's more interesting than Martin. He's more interesting than Eric Fetty. He's more interesting than Jonathan Cannon. So that means as they start getting prospects into the mix, maybe Burke and Anthony Kay are the holdovers, and the other guys are all sort of competing to keep their respective spots to, stay in the mix as prospects join the equation. We're talking about Hagen Smith and Noah Schultz and Tanner McDougal and some of the White Sox that have been on the radar for us now for a little while. We are going to hit one more quick break. When we come back, Niv Shah joins us. We'll talk about some ads and drops on the Ottoneu platform, some players that we're thinking about cutting over the course of this weekend, and we have our first Taste of the Majors segment of 2026. Welcome back to Rates and Barrels, the closer carousel, spinning and spinning fast. And look, baseball season's back, which means the Taste of the Majors stand at Nationals Park is back. We have our senior hot dog correspondent, Niv Shah, back with us this season. Niv also founded Ottoneu, so we're going to talk a lot of baseball and hot dogs along the way. Niv, welcome back to a new season.
Thanks, guys. Great to have you. Or great to have me. Great to have something. Great to be back.
Yeah, there you go. We'll go with that one.
See, we're warming up. It's warming up. It's April. We'll figure it out.
Yeah. Not just you, man. We saw what they did pre-show in D.C. We'll get to that here in just a couple of minutes. But messy bullpens around the league right now, and even a couple where we thought things were pretty well settled. I don't think Cade Smith is in immediate danger of losing his job, but I do think the early struggles have more of us asking, who closes if he goes on the IL, if there's an injury or something lurking here? I know that Cleveland bullpen is near and dear to your heart, and Ottoneu is great because you don't have to be getting saves to have value as a reliever. So what are people doing on the platform, and what do you see in that bullpen behind Cade Smith for anybody trying to speculate?
The Guardians bullpen is interesting because everything got bumped up, right? Everything got messed up because of Clase. And I think you could, if you're looking at that team, you could make an argument that, a lot of the answers would be a lot more solid if everything had happened 6 months earlier than it happened or whatever. What I'm seeing in Ottoneu is Eric Sobrowski is just massively being added. In the last 30 days, 71% of leagues have added him. So it's just a guy who wasn't rostered coming out of your draft. Everyone's jumping on him. The reason for that, in my estimation, is like Cleveland very clearly for the last few years, they've pitched every baseball game like it is Game 5 against the Yankees in the ALDS. Like, it's just everyone's going to throw. They're going to play matchups. They love getting a lefty in. And Zabrowski is the first lefty on that depth chart right now. And I feel like he's just going to pitch every game that he's available. There's always a lefty on the other team that you need to get out. So Zabrowski's just going to pitch a lot. I don't know if he's necessarily going to be like in line for saves, but he's going to get a lot of holds, which helps you in Fangraphs points on Ottoneu. He's going to help your ratios, which helps you everywhere. And he's going to pitch a lot. And, Ottoneu is the market has definitely reacted to him. He's been added, like his roster rate coming out was something like 12%, and now it's 85%. So that's the first guy that the league is like the people playing Ottoneu are looking at.
I think even in saves league, there's a uniqueness to the Ottoneu structure that makes it such that you don't really want to pick up the hot, guy that just has one or two saves. Like, you kind of want to make last. It's a keeper league. It's, they have to be on the table in free agency and the auction for like two days. So like, you can't just be like, oh, he got a save, I'm going to pick him up, and then once you drop him, you have this penalty on your roster. So you don't really want to buy anybody that you're like, he's saving now, but will he save in 2 weeks? And like, is he actually a good pitcher? Like, I think that's my problem with the Rangers bullpen is identifying even a reliever that I think is any good. And so I've largely stayed out of it because I'm not sure that any of those relievers are good. And in Ottoneu, I want to make sure at least he's good. So Sobrowski, I think I have the confidence he's good. Even in saves leagues, I think he'll get like 5-10 saves. If they do anything with Cade, and I think the underlying numbers look fine on Cade, but if they do anything with Cade, it might be, hey, we're just going to use Sobrowski because there's 2 lefties out of 3 coming up, and it's a good matchup for him, and we're giving you a breather here today, Cade. So I do think he'll still get to 5 to 10 saves, and I'd rather, like I said, own the good pitcher.
Being a good pitcher, right? That's a big distinction here.
I do like games that reward you for finding good pitchers. That seems to be more fun than just chasing, I don't know, the Twins bullpen. Alan Chen pointed this out before the show today. 4 saves, 4 different relievers. And I don't think any of them are good. I mean, Eric Orza pops in the model. He averaged pop relatively. He doesn't pop as
not
like
a single one of them has an above average stuff plus for a reliever, by the way. That's like one of the 3.
Right. Orza's just the guy that if you map them all out by stuff and location numbers, the model will be like, well, that's that guy. He averages 92.6 on his fastball. Yeah. I don't think any of those guys, Funderburk, Larison, Justin Topa, I don't think any of them are rosterable anywhere right now. I think that's a bullpen that you actually can completely ignore in all formats.
That's such a crazy thing to say about a major league staff, right? Like, when's the last time there was a staff that you were just like, nah?
Rockies?
Like a non-Colorado situation.
A non-Rockies staff. Yes,
yeah, non-Rockies. Yeah, sure. But I mean, that's what we're talking about though, right? Like, either the ball, like, are you playing in a ballpark where no, you just can't, no one's going to strike anyone out and no one's actually good. Like,
they don't have a single guy over 94, and the average reliever now is up to 96.
Yeah, I think the 2 other bullpens that do have my attention right now, I mean, Texas is weird because Jake Junis has a couple of saves. I'm seeing people chase Tyler Alexander. Cole Winn just got added in my Thursday night keeper league with the Thursday night pickups. Robert Garcia is still rostered at like 50% in CBS. So I don't know. I still think Robert Garcia of those guys might get the most saves by season's end, but clearly they're just playing matchups and messing around. But the more interesting one is really San Francisco. Ryan Walker has 1 save this season. It was on March 30th. Since then, he's made appearances entering the game in the 6th inning and in the 7th inning. That is not typical closer behavior. So are people chasing Keaton Winn or Caleb Killian or someone else? Like, what are the Ottoneu players doing here? Because that might actually be instructive for a lot of folks in the broader fantasy universe as far as where the best shots are in the San Francisco pen.
Yeah, so Keaton Winn is definitely the guy that Ottoneu has latched onto. Something like 3% rostered coming out of drafts, and now he's up to 60% rostered. 45% in the last week. So 45% bump in the last week, I mean. So, I think there's something there. I think it's also like just chase the best pitcher situation, rather than look for the guy, because it's just going to be a thing where at the end of the season, or not even the end of the season, but like in a couple weeks, you're going to be like, well, that's where the saves were going, and I guess they chose their best pitcher to do that with. So it's not rocket science. It's just sort of jumping on the best pitcher rather than looking at the last game and seeing the order of relievers. I feel like that's like that's a shift in the last few years, where before you definitely would know if somebody came in the ninth. They're coming in the ninth for the next 2 weeks at least. And, like Eno said earlier, like I don't know if that's necessarily a lock this year or like going forward.
This team, like it seems like he's going to just use different guys at different times, and there's going to be
so you just want to get the guy
three
who
guys with 10 saves.
Yeah, but you want to get the guy who's then going to give you your best stuff in other places, right?
And I think, I picked up a couple shares of Keaton Winn and Ottoneu. And it was one of those things where I picked him up. He pitched the 8th inning clean, looked really good, and I was like, he's the setup guy. And then I think he got blown up while he was on the board, and I reduced my bid.
Right.
I had like a $2 or $3 bid on him at first. I was like, yeah. And then I was like, no. And I think I'd put him up a couple times too. So I was like, well, I'm winning him. So I got 2 $1 shares of Keaton Winn now. I love the splitter, by the way, and he's going to spam that splitter. And I think the modern day comp is a bit of a Kirby Yates situation, where he's not going to have a plus fastball, but it is still 97. It's good enough fastball, and he has really good feel of the splitter. So I think a Kirby Yates type career could be in the cards for Keaton Winn.
That's a good career, by the way.
That's a good outcome.
Kirby Yates has gone over 30 saves in 2 different seasons. He's had sub-1 whips, I think, 3 different times. He's had 100 Ks in a season before. Like, there's a lot to like about a profile like that with Keaton Winn. So I'm glad we're in agreement there. And I'm surprised he's still available in about 60% of NFBC main event leagues. That is where I thought maybe there'd be a little more movement on him already. I'm going to guess if Keaton Winn gets a save or 2 between now and Sunday night, that is going to cost you a lot in Fab. So hopefully it doesn't happen. Hopefully there's just more confusion for 3 days. Like Winn pitches well, they don't generate a save chance, and then you can get him a little bit cheaper.
Killian's stuff looks pretty good. I want to just give him a mention. He could be, meaningful. It is a big jump in stuff and a big jump in and so maybe the poor location numbers are believable. Like maybe he needs to figure out his new arsenal, and maybe that'll, rear its ugly head.
Are we jamming anybody onto rosters from the Houston bullpen with Brian Abreu down a couple ticks and Josh Hader still a little ways away from returning from the IL? Is there actually a source of saves we want, or is that just a committee where it's a little bit of King, it's a little bit of someone else, it's Abreu getting more chances? Like, do you see any reasonable pickups there?
I do not. I am like reasonable. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I think, how far out is Hader? It's still a little bit, right? Still a month?
Still probably about a month. It's a reasonable estimate. The last update I see was a bullpen session on the last Friday of March. So
so that's
a little bit in the slow play build up right now.
Yeah. Okay. That seems like a tough one, and that Hader's coming. So that's a little different than the other bullpens, right? Where there isn't someone coming down the line that you're like, but Hader's going to have that job if and when he comes back. Like, I don't love no updates in 10 days, but I would assume that's like playing for the next 3 weeks. I would play with someone else because you want the upside of like the whole season, right?
And with the way that things have gone over this, with Ray's stuff being down and Hader being out, like they haven't actually been developing, the next Brian Abreu really. And the Kaiwei Tang was an interesting pickup from the Giants, and they have got his velo up to 95. But it's kind of like a starter's arsenal that's playing up in the pen, and it's like a 4-pitch mix, a pretty good breaking ball. I just don't trust him as a closer. I think he's a decent pickup that they can pitch the 7th and 8th with. I don't see him as taking over as closer.
One of the big cuts in the last week is obviously Christian Javier with the injury and having to leave that start early. So I wonder if like guys like that are actually going to get spot starts instead of
that's along what we thought about blue ball, and Ryan Weiss is getting these weird 3-inning starts. So Weiss, blue ball, and Tang are all guys that could be in between the bullpen and the rotation. Yeah.
So let's move on to the final part of our conversation, Niv. For those who are not familiar, Nats Park has a stand called Taste of the Majors. They have a tribute dog for the visiting team during every series throughout the season, and you have been willing to eat as many of those hot dogs as you can, not like 10 a game, but like to try each one whenever you get to go to a different series for a few years now. And a familiar dog leads us off this year. The LA dog comes back, and we tried to do some predictions a few weeks ago of what would likely be on some of the dogs. This Dodgers favorite is wrapped in smoked bacon and covered in grilled onions, peppers, and pickled jalapenos. Has anything changed for you with the LA dog since the previous times you had it? That sounds like kind of standard, average, or slightly above average fare from the Taste of the Major stand.
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to see the Dodgers last year. And again, this year I didn't know I was going to get to go, but I got to go to opening day, which was pretty cool. And if you thought my intro to this segment was rough, the Dodgers dog was definitely an opening day dog. It's opening day, and the Nats are the Nats, and there's only so many people that are going to be at games other than opening day. And so the Nats are like, well, look, we're not going to staff for a 40,000 person game. We're not going to get 40,000 people to every game. Fine. They have to make compromises as a result. The Dodgers dog on opening day was definitely pre-wrapped, pre-made, and sitting there. And having a hot dog sit for a little while is not as bad as having a hamburger sit for a while, but it's not great. And the hot dog was wrapped in bacon, so that that part, it is adding a little bit of fat, so it's staying a little moist. But it just wasn't their best execution. And it was the same dog as last year. So I don't know what I didn't expect it to be different, but I feel like, if any Nats people are watching this, like, have a little bit more fun out there, guys. Like, it's okay. But it was, I think I've had that hot dog with you outside Giant Stadium before. It's like very West Coast dog, bacon wrapped, put some peppers and onions on it from like, oh, you're making sausages also. Can you just pull some of those peppers and onions over? That's great. Awesome. Love it. And then throw some jalapenos on it. Like, it's a good flavor mix. It's tasty, but it's the same one as last year. And like, Taste of the Majors is such a ridiculous and fun concept that I think they should be a little bit more loose with it. That would be my takeaway.
Yeah, and I just think the pre-wrapped plan is going to make that play down a little bit.
It's just going to backfire. You want it to be on the grill with the bacon going and just coming off, sizzling a little bit. That's the
that
opportunity.
Totally makes sense. Did they redeem themselves when the Cardinals came to town with the St. Louis dog? Description on this one: this delicious half smoke comes with provolone cheese. If you're watching on YouTube, it very clearly did not. Grilled onions and peppers topped with chopped bacon. I know provolone cheese when I see it, sir. And I also wondered if they
it's
meant
not
to.
Yellow.
Did they also mean to use Provel cheese, that cheese that they use on the St. Louis pizza?
Oh, man, that's a great point. I forgot about the St. Louis style pizza. Maybe they were. Oh, man, I'm going to need a second because I can taste that in my mouth right now from like 3 years ago, the last time I had that stuff. St. Louis style pizza is weird, you guys. Like, I don't know. So I learned some things with this one. They broke a precedent, and this is an important precedent to break. So we're going to have to track it the rest of the year. This is the first hot dog I had that was not a hot dog. It was a half smoke, which is a DC specialty. We've talked about it before. It's like a hot dog that has a sausage inside of it. Basically, it's like a little bit of ground sausage and a little bit of what you'd make a hot dog out of, however you want to make a hot dog, together in the same casing. And it's really good. It ends up texturally being a little bit meatier, a little bit more interesting. The casing has to be a little hardier because of the filling. So that was awesome. The other thing I learned, which is like a really interesting, I don't know how advanced I want to get on this stuff, but I went to the third game of the St. Louis series, and I got there about 45 minutes before game time, and they didn't have any provolone cheese. So I'm thinking they probably have enough provolone for 1 day's worth, like 1 baseball game's worth. So I don't know if has to start being like, Niv, you're going to the first game of every series, but they replaced it with cheese sauce. They called it cheese sauce. I think we all know what cheese sauce is in a ballpark. It was cheese sauce, and you know what? You can look at this thing and say it doesn't look great or whatever. I thought it was quite good. The difference between the Dodgers one and the St. Louis one is subtle, but they chopped up the peppers and onions and bacon and like sort of sprayed it across the top rather than wrapping everything up and not giving me very many peppers and onions. The cheese sauce was underneath, so it was less messy than cheese sauce could be on this situation. The half smoke made it so the cheese sauce didn't taste like I was eating like a really old nacho, so that was nice. And chopping everything up like that, the bites are like a lot easier to make. You get every bite has all the flavors in it. And the half smoke was really good. And if you guys have never had a half smoke before, I'd really recommend it. I think Derek, especially,
it looks so bad.
I know.
Yeah, it didn't photograph well. Which
listen. If you want me to bring the light box in and get in some like,
I'm not talking about the quality of the picture.
There's a certain gritty quality to what you bring to the table when you shoot it this way. So I think this is a more
you're getting
artistic
exactly what I'm getting. This is exactly it's street photography. It's true to life.
It looks like the casserole that you put together when you got nothing left in the house, and you're like, "Oops, I got to make dinner," and you're like, "I'll just chop up this bacon and chop it and just throw it all together and put it on top of spaghetti and call it."
I will say, I was with a guy. I was with one of my good friends who I go to a lot of these games with, and he's worked in kitchens and restaurants before. He runs a bar nearby, and he said, and I quote, "This is the best plating we've seen on one of these in a while." So now you can go either way with that feedback, right? That feedback but he was like, that's one of the more visually appealing ones. So in person,
oh my God,
the peppers were brighter. Everything looks a little bit popping a little bit better. And
because the Dodgers one looked even sadder because it just looked like you just put some canned peppers on top of it.
But it looks like a hot dog, right? This doesn't look like a hot dog because there's so much stuff piled on top of it that you can't see that this is like a hot dog.
It's a hot dog casserole.
Yes. Yeah. You're like, I believe there is a foundational hot dog under there, but all I'm seeing is the toppings.
So I gather the winner here, as far as if we're stacking the first two up for the season, the St. Louis dog was better than the LA dog.
St. Louis is a strong start to the season. I think the important things are a different venue or a different delivery mechanism of the peppers and onions. When you get those long peppers and onions, you have to like really concentrate on biting. Otherwise you got like pepper hanging off your face and all that. And chopping it up is a great solution. And the half smoke, I'm really interested because it is DC's Taste of the Majors. And if the DC crew is going to start saying, we're going to provide half smokes here, I'm really interested in the direction that goes because I think that would be a really big upgrade. In Nats Park this year, there are now,
I want a half smoke today.
Yeah, they're good. If you've never had one, trust me, they're really good. If you have had one, like it's like a bratwurst,
when I make burgers,
like a little bit.
I sneak a little bit of pork in, because I love that feeling of like multiple meats in there. So I love this idea that there's like a little bit of sausage in with my hot dog. I would love to taste that.
It adds a lot of smokiness, but it's still a hot dog, and that feels really good. There are now 3 specialty hot dog stands in Nats Park beyond the Taste of the Majors, like 3 other businesses, and I'm sure we'll get to them as the season goes on because there's going to be a lot of opportunity for this nonsense. But I'm just curious in what ways they're going to try to distinguish themselves from each other, because there's just so much. They've really leaned into hot dog, which is something, because Nats Park used to be known for chicken tenders, which is not really I mean, I don't know, garlic fries in San Francisco and like a bratwurst or whatever. And like, what is your expectation in DC for food? And you realize, like, I don't know, man, not much. Chicken tenders, like that's like kind of rough. So
was it the Peruvian chicken that used to be really big in DC?
Yeah. Sure. The rotisserie chicken. But I think, a half smoke is of the city, and I really hope that they lean into that more. That'd be great.
Yeah, it seems like a nice overall addition to kind of step one of all the dogs that they're building.
Yeah.
A lot more to come over the course of the season. We should have sent you to the Frozen Four. I saw all 4 teams that made it to the men's Frozen Four had specialty dogs that were making their way
when we get a travel budget.
We're going to need a travel budget next year.
Yeah.
Like, this is
I'll get that request in. The Wisconsin dog had cheese sauce and cheese curds. Listen, we eat a lot of cheese. We make a lot of cheese here. We're also civilized people for the most part. We don't combine those things. So
cheese curds is a great topping.
Yeah, but you
don't need to put cheese sauce on it.
Nacho cheese
on a hat
sauce
stuff
on it too. That's just ridiculous. So, Niv,
out
we
in
appreciate your time.
Out in Wisco.
Well, wait a minute, Niv. Like, have you ever called Wisconsin Wisco before?
No, but the thing I would call it, you probably don't want to wear on a jersey, right? Like whiskey. You don't want to say whiskey. No, not like that. But like, you can't say. You just can't say whiskey.
Whiskey,
right?
Oh, that's a fun one.
I think a lot of the abbreviations for Wisconsin come from people who do not grow up in Wisconsin. That's what makes them all a little bit strange when they're trying to make a city connect. So they put Wisco on the Brewers.
I know, but what do you call it, DVR?
What do I call Wisconsin?
Wisconsin, apparently.
Call it Wisconsin.
It's worth every syllable, guys. Don't even
every single syllable. We're not in such a hurry. We don't need to lop syllables off words to get our points across.
Yes.
And we don't need cheese sauce and
we have the
cheese
most bars per capita
on
so
the
we can
same
sit
hot
around
dog.
and say Wisconsin at each other. It's perfect.
Yeah, Wisconsin.
We're
gonna go on our way out the door. A reminder, you can join the Discord. If you don't watch us on YouTube, we'll get a picture of those dogs in there for you. Really, the whole point of the segment is to celebrate the creativity and to take this creativity into our own backyards. It's grilling season all over the place. For some of us, it never really stops. We're willing to grill when it's like 10 degrees outside. It's another Wisconsin trait if you're uninitiated. But we want to see what you create. When your favorite team is playing someone else, make a dog in their honor, share it in the food channel on our Discord. But that's going to do it for this episode of Rates and Barrels. We're back with you on Monday.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to hit that subscribe or follow button so you never miss an episode. If you enjoyed it, drop us a like, leave a rating, or sound off in the comments. We'll see you next time.